Hello everyone, and welcome to English Pod, the channel where we make learning English fun. In this series, we break down key words, slang, idioms, and cultural references from each episode of Sex and the City to help you naturally improve your English. Watch our videos either before or after you enjoy the episode to boost your understanding and language skills. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Let's dive in.
And for what we're doing today, it's just packed with everyday English vocabulary, expressions, stuff that can really help you understand the language better.
Especially those nuances, the way people actually talk.
That's the goal. So our mission is to unpack some of the key language from this one episode. Think of it as maybe part nostalgia trip if you're a fan, but also a really practical way to see how English gets used in like real social settings, particularly around relationships, different life stages, all that.
Right, that dynamic between singles and marrieds.
Precisely. So just to set the scene real quick. The episode follows Carrie Bradshaw, our main character, single writer in New York.
Yep.
And she goes out to the Hamptons for a weekend with her married friends.
Yeah.
And what happens is, well, a lot of funny moments, some awkward ones.
Definitely some awkward ones.
And some, kind of insightful observations about how married and single people interact, or maybe don't interact so well sometimes.
And the language they use really reflects that.
It does. Okay, let's get into it. Let's unpack this, maybe starting with some of the intermediate vocabulary that pops up quite a bit.
Sounds like a plan. One of the first things is Carrie talking about being a Hampton house guest.
Right.
And she has that great line, something like, Hampton house guests are always required to sing for their supper.
Okay, so let's break that down. Hampton house guest. Pretty straightforward, right? Someone visiting friends or family who have a place in the Hamptons.
Yeah. And the Hamptons, for anyone who doesn't know, it's this string of towns out on Long Island near New York City.
Kind of upscale, known as a vacation spot for New Yorkers, often linked with, a certain lifestyle.
Affluence, yeah. Summer houses, that sort of thing.
So that's the context. But what about that phrase, sing for their supper? That's an idiom.
It's a great one. Sing for their supper basically means you need to contribute something, do something useful or entertaining in return for the hospitality you're getting.
Like paying your way, but not with money.
Exactly. Not with money. In the episode, Carrie feels like her payment is telling stories about her dating life. She has to entertain her married hosts.
Right. Provide the amusement, the gossip almost. It's like this unwritten rule.
For an unspoken agreement. You're not just there. You're kind of part of the weekend's entertainment.
Okay, got it. Then, oh boy, we get that really memorable, maybe slightly cringeworthy moment. The full frontal encounter.
Oh, yeah. Hard to forget that visual, full frontal. It just means completely naked, seen from the front, everything visible.
Yeah.
And Carrie uses it to describe running into Peter, one of the married friends, who's just, well, strolling around the house naked.
Which is pretty shocking to her.
Totally. It highlights how different their maybe boundaries are, or just the unexpected things that happen in their married life, seen from her single viewpoint. It's definitely awkward.
For sure. A moment that sticks with you. Okay, shifting gears a bit. Carrie starts noticing this, like underlying tension. And she wonders, was there a secret Cold War between marrieds and singles? What's the deal with Cold War here?
Yeah, Cold War obviously makes you think of history, right?
Yeah.
The U.S. and Soviet Union. That period of tension, hostility, but no direct large-scale fighting.
Right. Lots of suspicion, different ideologies.
Exactly. So Carrie uses it as a metaphor, a really good one, actually.
Yeah.
To describe this subtle, kind of hidden tension she feels between her single self and her married friends.
So it's not like they're yelling at each other.
No, not open hostility. But there's this feeling, this sense of being on different teams, maybe, different perspectives, different priorities. It's that unspoken divide. Have you ever, felt that in social groups?
Oh, totally. That feeling where everyone's polite, but you can just sense these different worlds colliding underneath. It's real. And that leads nicely into Miranda's take.
Miranda. Always straightforward.
She has a pretty blunt perspective on how married people might see singles, using the word pity.
Right. Miranda suggests married people either fear their single friends or they pity them. And pity here means, feeling sorry for someone.
But often with a little bit of looking down on them.
Yeah, exactly. A hint of condescension. The single person's life is somehow lacking. less complete, less desirable. It really brings up how society values different relationship statuses, doesn't it?
It really does, and Carrie definitely feels that. She describes herself feeling like a leper at their dinner parties. Wow, that's a strong image.
It's very strong. Historically, a leper was someone with leprosy, right? Shunned, isolated.
Totally outcast.
Yeah. So today, we use it to mean someone who's avoided, ostracized, maybe because they're seen as different or undesirable in some way. Not literally contagious, obviously.
Right.
But Carrie using it, it just powerfully shows how excluded and frankly unwelcome she feels just because she's the single one in a room full of couples.
And her friend Stanford kind of echoes that, but in a different context. He talks about feeling like an outcast even within his own community.
Yeah, he says, now I'm starting to feel like an outcast in the outcasts.
So what's outcast mean there, specifically?
Well, an outcast is just someone rejected or excluded from a group. Stanford's comment is interesting because it adds another layer. It suggests these feelings of not belonging. They can happen even inside groups that are themselves maybe seen as being on the margins of society. It's complex, that whole sense of belonging.
Definitely adds complexity. Okay, the episode also puts Carrie into a pretty awkward fix-up. What exactly is a fix-up?
A fix-up, yeah, it's just an informal word for a date, but specifically one that someone else arranges for you.
Like your friend setting you up.
Exactly. And often, like in Carrie's case, maybe without you fully knowing or agreeing to it beforehand, her friends kind of orchestrate this meeting with Sean.
Which leads to some predictably uncomfortable moments. Ever been on a bad fix-up?
Oh, who hasn't? Yeah, it can definitely be a recipe for awkwardness.
Totally. Okay, speaking of Sean, this guy she's fixed up with, Carrie thinks about his approach to relationships. She calls him the marrying kind. What does that imply?
The marrying kind. It suggests someone who seems naturally inclined towards marriage. Maybe holds more traditional views about relationships, long-term commitment, settling down.
So when Carrie says that about Sean, she's pointing out his, conventional expectations.
Pretty much. Compared to maybe her own more questioning or less traditional view at that point.
Got it. Then later, Carrie's wondering about Sean's married friends. She hopes they might be more open-minded, calling them potential Cold War conscientious objectors.
That's a mouthful. Huh. It is.
Let's break down conscientious objector in this context.
Okay. So traditionally, a conscientious objector is someone who refuses military service, usually for moral or religious reasons, right? They object based on their conscience.
Right.
Carrie's using it playfully here, metaphorically. She's suggesting Sean's friends might, morally object to that whole Cold War tension between marrieds and singles.
So she hopes they won't take sides, they'll be accepting.
Exactly. She's hoping they might be allies, people who accept different lifestyles, different choices. It's a clever way to frame it, hoping for some common ground in that social divide she feels.
Makes sense. Then Sean takes a step, relationship-wise. He invites Carrie to his housewarming. What's that about?
A housewarming. It's a party people throw when they move into a new place.
Right, to warm the house, show it off.
Yeah, show off the new digs to friends and family. So Sean inviting Carrie. It suggests he sees things moving forward between them. He wants to include her in this, new chapter for him.
It's a gesture then. Inclusion. Things getting maybe a bit more serious.
Yeah.
Definitely a sign of increasing intimacy, yeah.
And during the tour of his new place, he shows her his den. What kind of room is a den, usually?
A den is typically a smaller room, more private, maybe cozier than the main living room. People use it for relaxing, reading, sometimes a home office.
Which is what Sean says he's using it for, right?
Yeah, he says it's his office for now. So it implies this more personal, maybe slightly separate space within his apartment.
Okay. There's also that funny bit where Carrie jokes about tagging Samantha's married conquests. Explain tagging in that specific humorous way.
Yeah, tagging. In this context, it's totally lighthearted. It means basically keeping track of or mentally marking all the married guys Samantha has been involved with.
Almost like putting a label on them.
Exactly, like inventory control for Samantha's love life. It's just a funny, playful way to highlight Samantha's, her very unconventional approach to relationships.
Definitely Samantha. Later, though, things get a bit more serious. Carrie makes this vulnerable admission to Sean. She talks about her desperation. What does that reveal? Desperation. It's a strong feeling, right? That hopeless need or desire. It can make people do things they wouldn't normally do.
Yeah, impulsive things.
So when Carrie admits her desperation, it's quite vulnerable. It's just maybe she wasn't pursuing Sean out of, like, deep, genuine interest.
But more out of.
Maybe fear of being alone, or just this intense desire to be in a relationship, any relationship. It really touches on those societal pressures single people often feel.
Yeah, that pressure is definitely a theme. And then comes that famous comparison. She calls Sean the flesh and blood equivalent of a DKNY dress. Let's unpack flesh and blood.
Flesh and blood. It just emphasizes that someone is real. A living, breathing, tangible person, not just an idea or a fantasy.
Okay, so combining that, flesh and blood equivalent of a DKNY dress.
Right. So she's saying Sean is real, he's attractive, he's desirable, but maybe in a superficial way, like a trendy, stylish dress.
Like something you see, you think, oh, that looks good. Maybe you even feel like you should want it.
Exactly. Because it's fashionable, it seems like the right kind of thing to have, but it might lack that deeper connection. It might not actually fit her personally.
That's a great explanation.
Oh.
Okay, then Miranda uses the phrase, bend your ear. She explains why she pretended to be in a lesbian relationship at work. What's bend someone's ear mean?
To bend someone's ear, it's an idiom. It means talking to someone for quite a while, often about something that's bothering you, or maybe trying to persuade them about something.
We're talking at them almost.
Sometimes, yeah. Miranda says she used the situation, the fake relationship, to bend her colleague's ear about her work. So she used it as an excuse, an opportunity to talk at length about her professional concerns.
Got it. Strategic. Okay, near the end of the episode, Peter and Patience come back, and Carrie says this signals the end of a temporary ceasefire. What's the implication there?
A ceasefire, you hear in conflicts, wars, it's a temporary stop to the fighting, right? An agreement to pause hostilities. So Carrie uses it metaphorically. It describes that brief moment of peace, maybe, or harmony between the single and married friends at the party.
Before the tension comes back.
Exactly. Before the underlying issues resurface when Peter and Patience arrive, it suggests the basic conflict, that Cold War, it wasn't resolved, it was just on pause.
Okay. And finally, for this section, Miranda gets a compliment at work. She's called shrewd. What does that tell us about her actions?
Shrewd. It means being clever, sharp, astute, especially in practical matters. Often implies a bit of cunning, maybe.
So it's a compliment, but maybe a slightly edgy one?
Could be seen that way. It suggests her strategy, pretending about the relationship, was actually a smart, maybe even calculated move that worked out well for her career-wise.
Right. Okay, wow. We've covered a lot of really useful intermediate stuff there.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Now, let's maybe dig into some of the more advanced phrases, the expressions that really give the episode its flavor, its depth.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
How about that really reflective question Carrie asks herself about Sean? Was I just enjoying the illusion of a relationship without the reality? Let's unpack the illusion of a relationship.
Ooh, that's a deep one. The illusion of a relationship. It really gets at something fundamental, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It means a situation where, like, on the surface, things look like a real connection. You do a couple things, maybe, but underneath, something's missing.
Like the real substance.
Exactly. The genuine emotional intimacy, maybe the commitment, the shared understanding that makes a relationship, well, real.
Carrie's wondering if she was more into the idea of having a boyfriend than actually being with Sean, the person.
That projection of what we want onto a situation happens all the time, not just in romance.
Absolutely. That gap between hope and reality. Okay, another phrase Carrie uses, unspoken hostility. She senses this unspoken hostility between the marrieds and singles.
Right. Unspoken hostility.
It refers to those negative feelings, anger, resentment, dislike that people feel, but don't actually say out loud.
So it's under the surface. Totally under the surface. Carrie's picking up on this vibe, this subtle tension, maybe a clash of lifestyles or judgments, even though nobody's actually fighting or being overtly mean. It's that atmosphere you can sometimes feel in a room.
Yeah, that undercurrent. It can make things really uncomfortable, even if nothing is said. She also thinks about the fine line between pity and fear, how married people might see singles.
The fine line between pity and fear. That phrasing is great. It captures how close those two feelings can be, how blurry the line is. Carrie's thinking, okay, maybe married people feel sorry for singles, pity, like their life is missing something. Or maybe they're actually a little bit scared, fear of the single person's freedom, maybe the perceived chaos or lack of structure, especially compared to their own settled lives.
So it could be about their own insecurities, too.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's a really insightful point about potential feelings on both sides of that married-single divide.
This whole feeling of not quite fitting in leads Carrie to call herself the token single friend. What are the implications of token?
Yeah, token. When you use token like that, it means someone included in a group mainly just to represent a specific category.
Like checking a box.
Kinda, yeah. To give the appearance of diversity or representation. So Carrie feels like she's the one single person invited to the couple's dinner party, maybe just to add variety, or maybe even to make the couples feel better about their own choices by comparison.
But not really seen as an equal participant.
Right, not fully sharing the same world or experiences. It leads to feeling isolated, like you're the odd one out, the designated single.
We talked about it before, but that description of Sean, flesh and blood equivalent of a DKNY dress, it's so vivid. Let's revisit the deeper meaning there.
It really is such a brilliant metaphor. It captures so much so quickly. So yeah, the DKNY dress part implies he's got that surface appeal. He's attractive, stylish, maybe the right kind of guy on paper. You see it, you're drawn to it.
The should-want factor again.
Oh, exactly. But the flesh and blood part reminds us he's real. And then the whole phrase together suggests that when you actually try him on, metaphorically.
Get to know him.
Yeah. While he might look good, he doesn't actually feel right. It doesn't match her personal style, her comfort zone, her deeper needs. It's that clash between superficial desirability and real, genuine compatibility.
Perfectly put. Okay, after things with Sean fizzle out, Carrie says she dipped my toe back in the water and it felt a little too cold. What's the idiom, dip my toe back in the water mean?
Dipped my toe back in the water. It's a common one. It means trying something again, but cautiously, tentatively, especially after you've been away from it for a while.
Like testing the temperature before jumping in.
Exactly. So here, the water is the dating pool, romantic relationships. Carrie's saying she made a cautious attempt to date again with Sean, but it didn't feel good. It felt too cold, suggesting either she wasn't ready or maybe he just wasn't the right person to make dating feel appealing again.
Right, wasn't inviting. Okay, Carrie also makes this funny observation, kind of dry. Maybe the cracks in the foundation start when you have to leave the party early to breastfeed. What do the cracks in the foundation mean here?
The cracks in the foundation. It's another strong metaphor. It refers to the first small signs of weakness or problems in something that seems solid.
Like a building or a relationship.
Exactly. Carrie's using it humorously here. She's suggesting that the demands and responsibilities of married life, of parenthood, even something totally normal like needing to leave a party to breastfeed these things, create limitations.
They change things.
They change things. And maybe these changes, these small shifts, subtly start to undermine the seemingly perfect foundation of a relationship or that carefree lifestyle they used to have. It's a light way of pointing out the inevitable shifts.
Yeah, acknowledging reality with a bit of humor. Now, about her feelings for Sean, or lack thereof, she admits, I wasn't really into him. I was just trying him on for size. What's it mean to try someone on for size?
Trying someone on for size. It's similar to the dress metaphor, actually. It means testing out a relationship, getting to know someone to see if they might be a good fit for you long term.
But without being fully committed yet.
Right, often without that deep emotional investment right at the start. Carrie's being really honest here. She's admitting she was basically experimenting, seeing if Sean could work for her, rather than being genuinely smitten from the get-go.
Okay, now back to Peter and his stroll. Carrie sees his nudity as a breach of etiquette. Explain that phrase.
A breach of etiquette. Etiquette is like the unwritten rules of polite social behavior, right?
Yeah, manners, customs.
So a breach is a violation, breaking those rules.
Yeah.
Carrie thinks Peter walking around naked in front of her, a guest, is a major violation of social norms. It shows a lack of consideration, maybe a lack of respect for her presence.
It highlights different ideas about boundaries.
Definitely. Different expectations of what's appropriate, especially between hosts and guests.
And this leads Carrie to confront patients directly, asking if Peter crossed the line. What does crossing the line mean?
Crossing the line, it means going too far, doing something that's considered unacceptable, inappropriate, maybe offensive, stepping over the boundary of acceptable behavior.
So Carrie's asking patients for validation almost, Does she agree this was out of bounds?
Yeah, it's a direct challenge. Asking if Patience also sees Peter's actions as disrespectful and unacceptable, it's confronting the issue head on.
Okay. Charlotte, meanwhile, she has a different theory about why married couples keep single friends around. She wonders if it's about living vicariously. Explain that.
Living vicariously. This means experiencing something indirectly by watching or hearing about someone else's experiences rather than doing it yourself.
So like getting secondhand excitement.
Pretty much. Charlotte's suggesting that maybe her married friends enjoy hearing Carrie's dating stories because it gives them a taste of excitement, freedom, maybe drama, things they might feel are missing from their more settled lives.
It lets them experience the single world without the risks.
Exactly. It's like watching an adventure movie instead of going on the adventure.
Got it. Then Sean, maybe feeling a bit attacked or insecure, asks Carrie, "Why are you so on the defensive about being single? What's it mean to be on the defensive?"
To be on the defensive means you're acting like you need to protect yourself. You're ready to argue against any perceived criticism or questioning.
Like you're expecting an attack.
Yeah. Sean's question implies he thinks Carrie is being overly sensitive or maybe reactive whenever her single status comes up, like she feels she constantly has to justify it or protect herself.
Interesting angle.
Mm-hmm.
Later, Carrie reflects, maybe dating someone like Sean is just a rite of passage before you settle down. What's a rite of passage?
A rite of passage. This usually refers to a ceremony or an event that marks moving from one stage of life to another, like a graduation or a wedding.
Or maybe less formal experiences too.
Definitely. It can also mean a significant experience that everyone in a certain group or situation goes through. Carrie's using it here to suggest that maybe dating someone who isn't quite right for you long term. Maybe that's just a necessary step.
A learning experience.
Yeah, a necessary learning experience on the path to finding what you do want. The idea that some experiences, even tough ones, are essential for growth.
That makes sense. Seeing Stanford feel excluded, even within the gay community, gives Carrie a sobering thought. What does that phrase mean?
A sobering thought.
Yeah.
It's a realization that makes you pause. It's serious, makes you think carefully, often carries a sense of gravity, maybe disappointment.
It grounds you a bit.
Exactly. So Carrie's sobering thought is realizing that exclusion, not fitting in, that can happen anywhere. Even within groups you might assume are all about acceptance. It's acknowledging a more complex, maybe less ideal reality.
Yeah, a tough realization. Okay, last one. Miranda's situation at her law firm, needing to pretend, brings up the term old guard. What's the old guard in this context?
The old guard. It typically means the established, traditional group within an organization or society, usually the ones who've been around a long time, hold power and maybe resist change.
The establishment, basically.
Yeah, often more conservative in their views or ways of doing things. So for Miranda, the old guard at her law firm represents the senior partners, probably mostly men, who have traditional ideas about women's roles.
Which pressures her to conform.
Right, leading her to feel she needs to invent a heterosexual relationship to fit their expectations and maybe advance her career.
Wow. Okay, we have definitely taken a deep dive into the language of just this one episode, haven't we?
We really have. From, Hampton house guests right through to navigating the old guard. It's amazing how much is packed in there.
It really is. So much insight into social dynamics, relationships, all just embedded in the everyday words and phrases they use.
Absolutely. And like we've been saying, understanding this stuff, it's more than just the dictionary definition, is it? It's about getting the cultural context, the little nuances, seeing how language shapes the interactions and reveals the themes of the show. So where do we start? That title seems like the obvious place. Bay of Married Pigs.
Yes. Let's get into that.
Yeah.
It's clearly a pun, but what's it actually doing?
Well, it connects directly to the Bay of Pigs invasion, obviously. That historical event known for being a bit of a chaotic failure.
Okay, right. So the show's borrowing that feeling.
Exactly. It's mapping that sense of a disastrous, overwhelming invasion onto Carrie's personal feeling of being swamped by the world of married couples.
Ah, okay. So it's not just a joke, it's setting a theme. This feeling of being besieged.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It gives her anxiety this slightly dramatic, almost like satirical weight right from the start. It's funny, but it's rooted in a real feeling.
Yeah, that makes sense. It frames her single experience against this perceived onslaught. Okay, moving on. Fashion is huge in this show. Almost another character.
Definitely.
So what about the DKNY dress reference? Carrie compares a date to one.
Right, saying someone is the flesh and blood equivalent of a DKNY dress. That's such perfect shorthand for that specific time and place.
What does DKNY signal exactly?
Well, back then, DKNY wasn't just clothes. It represented a very specific New York City vibe, urban chic, sophisticated, maybe a little slick.
So comparing a guy to it suggests what? He looks good, seems right for the city, but maybe lacks depth.
That's definitely part of it. It's about that surface impression, the image. It really highlights how much fashion and labels were tied into judging people, or at least forming quick impressions, in that NYC culture Carrie navigates.
Like a visual language.
Absolutely. It communicates status, aspiration, belonging, all without a word. It shows how intertwined identity and style were.
Okay, another cultural moment that jumps out is the Pat the husband idea.
Oh, yeah. That one lands immediately.
It does, doesn't it? You
Yeah.
instantly picture it. What's that symbolizing about marriage, do you think?
It's shorthand, really, for a certain kind of traditional, maybe even patriarchal marriage dynamic. That little pat, it suggests the wife is managing or placating a slightly overbearing husband.
Like a subtle form of control or maybe just coping?
Could be either, or both.
Yeah.
It implies this established role-playing. The husband asserts, the wife smooths things over.
And the fact that the friends all get it instantly.
Right. That shows how recognizable that dynamic was, part of the cultural wallpaper, even if people were starting to question it. It's a quick, funny nod to those older marital scripts.
Then there's the whole Hamptons invitation. Sounds nice, a weekend away, but for Carrie, it's loaded.
Very loaded. The Hamptons, as the sources point out, isn't just any beach town. It's the summer spot for wealthy New Yorkers. It
Yeah.
symbolizes established money, settling down, a more traditional path.
So getting invited there isn't just a casual thing for her.
No, it represents stepping into that settled, affluent, maybe slightly conventional world. It's the opposite of her single, urban, maybe more unpredictable life.
It's like a physical manifestation of the life she hasn't chosen, a contrast.
Absolutely. Which leads perfectly into that martinis and baby bottles contrast you see.
That imagery is so stark, isn't it?
It really cuts to the core of her conflict in the episode. Martinis equal her current life independence, nightlife, adult concerns. Baby bottles, well, that's the world of her friends who are new parents. Domesticity, different priorities.
It's not just about drinks versus baby gear. It's about fundamentally different life stages colliding.
Exactly. And the tension that creates for someone straddling those worlds or feeling pulled between them, it's visually very effective.
And this feeling of being out of place, it sort of echoes a famous movie line, even though it's not said out loud.
You mean the Wizard of Oz vibe? You're not in Kansas anymore?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
sense of disorientation she feels in her friend's baby-proofed house.
Right. It's that same feeling Dorothy has arriving in Oz, this strange, unfamiliar territory with totally different rules. The baby-proofed house is Oz for Carrie in that moment.
It's clever because it taps into something everyone knows. That phrase instantly means you're way outside your comfort zone.
And that's exactly her experience, moving from the known world of single Manhattan to this alien landscape of early parenthood.
Okay, let's shift to Miranda's storyline. Pretending to have a boyfriend for work. What does that reveal about workplace culture?
Well, it speaks volumes about Wall Street or similar male-dominated fields at that time. Even in the late 90s, there was often this unspoken pressure.
Pressure to what? Conform.
Yeah, to fit a certain mold. There was an expectation, sometimes subtle, sometimes not, that women needed to hit traditional milestones, like being in a relationship, to be seen as, stable or serious.
Wow. So she felt she needed to invent a relationship just to be taken seriously professionally.
That's the implication. It highlights the kind of hoops women sometimes had to jump through, the ways their personal lives were scrutinized differently in those environments.
It wasn't just professional life, though, was it? Stanford's experiences show similar pressures even within the gay community.
That's a really important point. Stanford's frustration about the social scene, about hierarchies based on looks or relationship status, it shows that exclusion isn't just something that happens between groups.
It can happen within them, too.
Absolutely. Even in a community that faces marginalization from the outside, there can be these internal dynamics, these pressures to conform to certain images or ideals, leading to people feeling like outsiders within their own group.
It complicates the picture, doesn't it? Shows that community doesn't always mean universal acceptance.
Definitely. And then, back to Carrie, there's her run-in with what the sources call baby-proofing culture.
Right. which must seem utterly bizarre if you don't have kids.
For sure. I mean, baby-proofing involves changing your entire environment, covering outlets, padding corners, locking cabinets. For Carrie, walking into that space.
It's like the physical environment is screaming parenthood.
Exactly. It's a tangible symbol of how drastically life changes with kids, highlighting that cultural divide between parents and non-parents. It makes the difference in lifestyles completely concrete.
Okay, and one last cultural point before we get into the language itself. The applied idea of the lipstick lesbian stereotype.
Yeah, this comes up in relation to Stanford feeling rejected. The term itself isn't used in the episode, I don't think.
No, it's just hinted at.
Right. But the stereotype of the lipstick lesbian, a gay woman who presents as traditionally feminine, exists. Stanford's experience seems to touch on these complex internal dynamics within the LGBTQ plus community regarding attraction, presentation, and sometimes, unfortunately, internalized biases or preferences that can feel exclusionary.
Just adds another layer, showing that identity and attraction are complex, and stereotypes can pop up even where you least expect them.
It's all surprisingly nuanced.
Okay, wow. That's a lot of cultural baggage packed into one episode. But now let's switch gears and look at the language, because even the way they talk is interesting.
Definitely. Starting with Carrie's voiceovers, they often use, like, sentence fragments, right?
Yeah, things like, another weekend, another couple's retreat, another reminder I was single. Technically not full sentences.
Exactly. Grammatically, they're incomplete. But in spoken language, especially in a first-person, intimate narration like hers.
It sounds totally natural, maybe even more natural.
Right. It mimics the flow of thought, short bursts. If you wrote it out formally, it was another weekend, it was another couple's retreat. It would sound stiff, lose that immediacy.
It pulls you into her head more effectively.
Precisely. It's a stylistic choice that really works for that internal monologue feel. Then there's the use of different past tenses to show sequence.
You mean like the past perfect, the had done something form?
Yeah. Like when Carrie thinks about her friends, they had already made their plans. That past perfect tells us the planning happened before she arrived.
It's not just they made plans that had made stresses, it was finished, done.
Yes, and that subtly reinforces her feeling of being an add-on, an afterthought. The grammar itself helps convey her emotional state.
That's clever. Okay, what about Miranda imagining having a boyfriend? That uses a specific structure, too.
It does. That's the second conditional. For hypothetical or unreal situations in the present or future.
Her line is, if I had a boyfriend, they'd stop asking so many questions.
Perfect example. The structure is if plus past simple. Even though she's talking about the present, followed by would plus verb, it's the classic what-if construction.
Exploring a possibility that isn't real, but considering the consequences, it really highlights why she feels the pressure at work.
Exactly. Now, something called cleft sentences sounds technical, but it's about emphasis.
How does that work? Is there an example?
Yes, Carrie's observation. It wasn't the husband that scared me. It was the way the wife changed. That it was that structure.
Ah, right. It sort of isolates one part of the sentence.
Precisely. It cleaves the sentence to put the spotlight on a specific element here. It's not the husband himself, but the wife's reaction that Carrie finds disturbing.
So, redirects your attention, creates a contrast.
Yeah.
Makes you focus on the subtle thing, not the obvious one.
Exactly. Very effective for highlighting a specific point. Then we have reported speech. Telling someone what someone else said.
Like Carrie narrating, he said he wanted to try something different.
Right. And notice the verb tense. The original person probably said, I want to try something different. Present tense.
But when Carrie reports it later, want becomes wanted.
Yeah.
Past tense.
That's called backshifting. It's standard in reported speech. You shift the verb tense one step back into the past to reflect that the original speaking happened earlier. Keeps the timeline clear.
Makes sense. It's automatic when you speak, but it's a specific grammatical rule.
It is. And then there are positives. Simpler concept, maybe?
What are those again?
It's basically a noun or noun phrase placed next to another noun to explain or identify it, like Pat, the husband.
Oh, right. The husband just clarifies who Pat is.
Exactly. It's like a little label tucked into the sentence. Adds information efficiently without needing a whole separate clause. Very common in speech and writing.
Got it. What about describing things that have been going on for a while? Like Samantha being set up.
Ah, that often uses the present perfect continuous, the have has been plus ing form.
So Samantha says, they've been trying to set me up for months.
Perfect. That tense emphasizes that the action started in the past, months ago, and is still continuing up to the present moment. It conveys duration and repetition.
You really feel the persistence of it, her ongoing annoyance.
Exactly. It's not just that they tried once, it's an ongoing thing.
Mm.
And lastly, a slightly more dramatic structure, negative inversion.
Okay, that sounds fancy. Use for emphasis.
Yes, strong emphasis. It often feels a bit more formal or literary. Carrie uses it when she says, "Never before had I felt so excluded."
Instead of the normal, I had never felt so excluded before.
Right. You start with the negative phrase, never before, and then you flip the subject, I, and the auxiliary verb, had.
Had I felt.
Oh.
Okay.
That inversion really punches up the sentence. It makes that feeling of exclusion sound unique and intense in that specific moment.
It definitely adds weight. Wow. So when you break it down like that,
Yeah.
it's just amazing how much is layered into, 20-odd minutes of a TV show.
Here's a synopsis of Sex and the City, Season 1, Episode 3, Bay of Married Pigs. Carrie explores the world of married people and how single women are often treated differently by them. After spending a weekend with a married couple, Carrie feels like a third wheel and starts to notice how her single status makes others uncomfortable or overly curious. When the husband unexpectedly walks around naked in front of her, it highlights how boundaries can blur in the homes of seemingly perfect couples. Meanwhile, Miranda is frustrated when her married coworkers exclude her from events because she's single. To test her theory, she pretends to have a boyfriend, and suddenly she's invited to everything. Charlotte wrestles with the idea of whether she should give in to traditional expectations, particularly when it comes to sex and relationships. And Samantha, always bold, dates a man who turns out to be married, reaffirming her distaste for the hypocrisy she sees in some married men. In the end, Carrie realizes that marriage isn't a magical solution, and that single life, while judged, is still valid and even freeing. The episode ends with her concluding that being single doesn't make you incomplete, it makes you independent.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy learning new words, phrases, grammar, and cultural references from Sex and the City. I will be back with the next lesson soon. Until then, bye.